They arrived in cattle cars, pressed shoulder to shoulder, breathing dust and defeat. Oberleutnant Klaus Hartmann kept his eyes forward as the train slowed. Through the slats, he could see endless plains, flat, golden, impossibly vast. Nothing like the bombed cities of Europe. Nothing like the propaganda said. For 3 weeks they had traveled across a country they'd been taught to despise. America was starving, they'd been told. America was divided. America would fall before the Reich's inevitable victory. But through those wooden slats, he'd seen something else. Farms with full silos, towns with lights burning through the night, factories with smoke rising, not destruction, but production. The doors opened to sunlight. American soldiers stood waiting, rifles lowered. They were young farm boys and city kids in clean, well-fitted uniforms. The POWs shuffled out onto Kansas soil, blinking against the brightness. The camp spread before them, rows of white barracks, perfectly aligned, a water tower against the sky, a mess hall with the smell of real bread. Hartmann had been told the camps would be brutal, starvation rations, beatings. Instead, he saw clean barracks with real roofs, running water. One of the guards, a farm boy with red hair, approached with a canteen. "Welcome to Kansas," he said in broken German, holding out the water. Hartmann stared at the offered canteen. He'd been taught that accepting anything from the enemy was weakness. But his throat was dust. He took the canteen. The water was cold, clean, better than anything he'd tasted in months. "Thank you," he said quietly. The boy smiled and moved on. Hartmann stood there, water still wet on his lips, and felt the first crack appear in everything he'd believed. June 18, 1943. Private Ernst Fischer walked the perimeter every day, studying the fence with an engineer's eye. Wood and wire, maybe 2 meters high, with a single strand of barbed wire at the top. No electric current. No guard towers with machine guns. Just a simple barrier. "It's a joke," Fischer said to Hartmann. "In Germany, we would have triple fencing, watchtowers every 50 meters, dogs. This is what you'd use for livestock." Hartmann watched guards patrol past 2 soldiers walking casually, laughing about something. They waved at prisoners playing cards nearby. "They're not afraid of us," Fischer continued. "We're enemy soldiers, trained killers, but they walk around like they're guarding a schoolyard." Hartmann looked beyond the fence to the endless prairie. "Where would we go? 100 miles in any direction, nothing but farmland. 3 German soldiers with no papers, no money, in enemy territory, we'd be turned in within hours." "So the fence is just for show." "No," Hartmann said. "The fence is real, but the real barrier isn't the wire. It's the geography. The Americans know it. We know it. The fence is just acknowledgement of that fact." That afternoon, 3 prisoners climbed the fence and walked toward the prairie. Guards drove out in a jeep, caught up with them within an hour, and brought them back. No beating, no punishment beyond a few days in detention. Fischer watched them return. They didn't even run. They just walked, like they knew there was nowhere to go. "The Americans are demonstrating something," Hartmann said. "They don't need to fear us because they hold such overwhelming advantage that captured German soldiers pose no threat whatsoever." It was a message, and it was being received. June 25, 1943. Hartmann stood in line with his tin tray, watching American cooks pile food onto plates, white bread, real butter, sliced ham, cheese, an apple. He'd been eating sawdust bread and potato soup for 2 years. He took his tray to a table where Fischer and Corporal Johann Weber Saturday Weber was moving slowly, as if each bite required conscious thought. Fischer hadn't touched his food, just staring at it. My sister wrote before we shipped out from Africa, Fisher said quietly. Said they'd reduce the bread ration again, said my mother fainted at the factory from hunger, said the neighbors were eating their cat. He picked up a strip of bacon, held it to the light. And we're eating bacon, in a prison camp, in enemy territory. Weber put down his fork. They told us America was starving. They showed us photographs of bread lines from the Depression. They said their soldiers were going hungry. They lied, Fisher said simply. Hartman picked up his sandwich and took a bite. The bread was soft, almost sweet. The ham was salty and rich. The cheese was real. It was the best sandwich he'd ever tasted, and that fact filled him with shame so profound he could barely swallow. Weber had tears running down his face. He wasn't sobbing, just crying silently while he ate. Fisher leaned forward. I believed them. Every word, every speech, every rally, every promise. I believed we were the master race, that our enemies were weak. I believed all of it. He picked up the sandwich again. But this sandwich is proof that everything they told us was a lie. Because if America was really starving, they couldn't feed us like this. This sandwich is proof of American strength more than any speech could be. They lied to us, Weber whispered. Our own leaders lied, and we believed them. Hartman finished his sandwich, took a bite of the apple. The truth is that we never had a chance. Not because we weren't brave, but because we were lied to about the nature of our enemy. They told us America was weak, but America was never weak. That night, lying in his bunk, Hartman thought about the sandwich. Such a simple thing, but it had undone something in him that all the battles and defeats hadn't touched. Germany was starving. America was feeding its enemies. That was the equation. July 15, 1943. The Americans brought a projector on a Thursday afternoon. The prisoners gathered, unsure what to expect. Hartman sat near the back, arms crossed, skeptical. The lights dimmed. The projector clicked on. At first, it was a newsreel showing American factories. Ford's Willow Run plant appeared on screen massive, larger than anything in Germany. B-24 bombers rolled off assembly lines like cars. America's industrial might produce as one B-24 Liberator every 63 minutes, the narrator said. 63 minutes. Hartman did the math. 23 bombers a day from one factory. The Luftwaffe had been proud when they managed 50 planes in a week. The images continued. Sherman tanks rolling off lines. Hundreds. Thousands. American tank production has reached 50,000 units annually. The number was absurd. Hartman had fought these tanks in Africa. They were real, and they kept coming. The newsreel showed shipyards building Liberty ships. Current production rate, 3 ships per day. Behind Hartman, someone whispered, "This can't be real. Propaganda." But Hartman had seen the evidence, the endless supplies in Africa, the bomber formations darkening the sky. This wasn't propaganda, this was documentation of reality. The images shifted to American cities. New York untouched by bombs. Chicago with bustling streets. Los Angeles with factories humming. Women operating machinery, building planes and tanks. Black smoke rising from production, not destruction. American wartime production now exceeds the combined output of Germany, Japan, and Italy. The words hung in the air. Hartman felt something break inside him, not his spirit, but the illusion that Germany could win through determination and ideology. The newsreel showed bombers filling the sky, formations of hundreds. Aircraft carriers. Enterprise, Yorktown, Hornet, Wasp, Essex, Lexington. Name after name. Germany had no aircraft carriers. Then training camps. thousands of new soldiers. Current armed forces personnel, 11 million and growing. The screen went black, the projector clicked off, the lights came up. No one moved, no one spoke. Fisher turned to Hartman. "If this is real—" "It's real," Hartman said. "I've seen it. The planes, the tanks, the supplies." Weber stood abruptly. "Then we never had a chance. All of it, Poland, France, Russia, Africa, all for nothing. We were fighting an enemy we couldn't possibly beat." "They lied to us," Fisher said. "About everything." The Americans hadn't shown them this newsreel to break their spirit. They'd shown it to reveal truth, to demonstrate with mathematical precision why Germany was losing. August 3, 1943. The letters arrived on Tuesdays. Hartman received 3 envelopes, addressed in his sister Elsa's handwriting. The postmarks were months old. He sat on his bunk and opened the first letter, dated May 1943. "Dearest Klaus, we received word that you are a prisoner." Mother wept with relief. "The city is not what you remember." The next paragraph was partially blacked out by censors. What remained was cryptic. "3 times last week. The basement is our home now." Air raids. His family living in basements. The second letter was more explicit. "The ration has been cut again. We receive 250 grams of bread per day now, and it is more sawdust than flour. Mother gave me her portion yesterday because I was dizzy at the factory. She is so thin now, Klaus. If we are winning, why are we starving? If we are so powerful, why do the bombs keep falling?" Hartman thought about the sandwich he'd eaten for lunch, his sister giving bread to their mother, both starving while he, a prisoner, ate better than he had in years. The third letter was the worst. Dated July. The firestorm came on the 24th of July. The bombs fell for hours. Not just explosives, but incendiaries. Hamburg burned. When we emerged, Hamburg was unrecognizable. Our street gone. Everything is ash and rubble. Mother sleeps through the sirens now. She has no strength left to run. I am frightened, Klaus. Hartman read the letter 3 times. Hamburg destroyed, his family starving, his mother waiting for death. Around him, other prisoners read their own letters. The barracks filled with the sound of weeping. Fisher held a letter, staring at nothing. "My mother, dead, crushed in the rubble. They couldn't even find her body." Weber spread 3 letters on his blanket. "My father says the factory is running at quarter capacity. He's 63, working 16-hour shifts, and he knows we're losing." A young prisoner named Heinrich crumpled his letter. "My brother, 19 years old, killed at Kursk." He laughed bitterly. "Died for the fatherland." What fatherland? The one being bombed to rubble? Hartman walked to the window. Outside, American soldiers played baseball, laughing. They were healthy, well-fed, confident. Fisher joined him. "I believe them, Klaus. I went to war proud. My mother ate her cat because the fatherland couldn't provide bread." "And we're eating bacon," Hartman said quietly. "The worst part isn't the defeat," Weber said, joining them. "It's realizing our suffering was unnecessary. All the death, all the destruction based on lies." That night, men lay in their bunks holding letters from home, confronting the gap between what they'd been promised and what their families were experiencing. Hartman tried to write to Elsa, but couldn't find words. What could he say? That he was well-fed while she starved? October 1943. Hartman was assigned to Earl Thompson's wheat farm. They transported prisoners there each morning, more out of procedure than necessity. Escape was pointless. Earl was 63, weathered by decades of Prairie Sunday. He handed Hartman a scythe, pointed at the wheat field. "Cut close to the ground. stack bundles every 20 feet. They worked in silence for hours. The labor was hard but honest, meditative in its repetition. At noon, Earl's wife Martha appeared with lunch: roast beef sandwiches on fresh bread, apples, cold lemonade. "Eat," Earl said, sitting beside Hartman. "You work hard. You eat good." After a few minutes, Earl spoke quietly. "Lost my son. Normandy. Got the telegram in July." Hartman stopped chewing. This man, whose son had died fighting Germany, had just fed him. "I'm sorry," Hartman said. Earl nodded. "David was 19, wanted to be a teacher, wrote us letters about the places he'd seen, said when the war was over he wanted to travel, see the world in peace." Martha handed Earl lemonade. Her eyes were red. "He died on the beach," Earl continued. "First wave. I don't understand why my boy had to die, why your boys had to die, why any of this had to happen." Hartman put down his sandwich. "Neither do I. I thought I was fighting for something noble, but I was wrong." Earl looked at him directly. "You got family back home?" "A sister, a mother, in Hamburg." "Hamburg." Earl nodded. "We heard about the firestorm. Martha cried for days, thinking about all those families." Hartman felt tears on his face. "My sister wrote that they're living in a basement, that my mother sleeps through the sirens because she has no strength to run." They sat in silence, two men on opposite sides of a war, both having lost something precious. "I don't hate you, son," Earl said finally. "I want to, but I can't. You're just a man who was lied to, who believed the lies, who did what he thought was right and found out too late it was wrong." "That doesn't excuse it," Hartman said. "No, it doesn't excuse it. But maybe it explains it. Maybe understanding is better than hate, because hate just leads to more war." Martha spoke quietly. "When this war ends, I hope you get home to your family. I hope you remember what hate costs. Remember that wars are fought by boys like David and men like you." After lunch, they returned to work. Earl worked beside Hartman, teaching him proper technique. "Good land here," Earl said. "Been in my family 3 generations. Someday I thought David would take it over." As the truck arrived to take them back, Earl approached Hartman. "You come back tomorrow?" "If they assign me." "I'll request you. Good worker. More than that. Good man to talk to. Helps talking to someone who understands what it's like to lose everything you believed in." On the truck ride back, Fisher leaned over. "What did you talk about?" "Truth. Loss. What happens when everything you believe turns out to be wrong." "And what did you learn?" "I learned that forgiveness is possible, that understanding can exist even between enemies, that maybe there's a way forward that doesn't require hate forever." December 24, 1943. The chapel was simple wooden pews and a plain cross. Hartman hadn't been to a service since before the war, but tonight he needed somewhere to go. Father Michael O'Brien, an American chaplain, was arranging candles when Hartman entered. "Welcome, Lieutenant. Please, sit anywhere." The chapel filled with prisoners, believers, and doubters alike, all seeking something they couldn't name. Father O'Brien began in German. "On this night, we remember a birth in difficult circumstances, a child born far from home, his parents refugees. We remember that the first to worship him were shepherds, simple men trying to survive in difficult times." He paused. "You are far from home tonight. Your families face hardships you can barely imagine. But on this night, we remember that grace extends even here, even to you, even now." They sang hymns in German, voices joining together. "Stille Nacht," "Heilige Nacht," "Silent Night," a song of peace sung by men who'd spent years at war. Father O'Brien invited anyone to speak. A young prisoner stood. "My name is Peter. Last year I was home with my family. We went to church together. This year I don't know where they are or if they're alive." One by one, men stood and spoke, of families lost, of guilt carried, of loneliness and fear. Weber stood. "I believed everything they told us, that we were superior, that our cause was just. I never questioned, and now my family pays the price." Fisher rose. "I was proud to serve, but pride is a lie when built on falsehood. I was proud of nothing. I served lies." Hartman found himself standing. "My name is Klaus Hartman. I was an officer. I gave orders that sent men to their deaths, believing I was doing my duty." He looked at the faces watching him. "But I was wrong. About everything. I believed lies, and because I believed them, I helped perpetuate them. Now my sister lives in Hamburg's ruins. My mother waits for death in a basement. And I eat ham sandwiches in Kansas." He looked at Father O'Brien. "How do we live with that?" "The first step to redemption is acknowledging the need for it," Father O'Brien said. "You've done that. You've faced the truth. But is acknowledgement enough? It's the beginning. Redemption is a journey, not a destination. It begins with truth, continues with repentance, and hopefully ends with restoration." Another prisoner stood. "I fought in the First War. When it ended, they told us we were betrayed, that we'd been stabbed in the back. I believed it. When they promised to make Germany great again, I believed that too. 2 wars in my lifetime, both based on lies. When will we learn?" Father O'Brien stepped forward. "By remembering, by telling the truth, no matter how painful, by refusing to let comfortable lies replace uncomfortable truths." Prisoners came forward to light candles, each flame a small light against darkness. Hartman waited until last, then lit his candle from the central flame and placed it with the others. Dozens of flames now, creating warm glow. Each lit by a man who'd been wrong, who'd believed lies, but also by a man choosing something different now. They ended with "O Tannenbaum, O Christmas tree." The words spoke of constancy, of hope that persisted even in winter. Father O'Brien offered a final blessing. "Go in peace. Carry the light you found here. Remember the truth you've acknowledged. And when you return home, help build something better from the ruins." Walking back through falling snow, Fisher said, "I want to believe acknowledging the truth is enough. But I'm afraid when we go home, we'll fall back into the same patterns." "Then we don't let that happen," Hartman said. "We remember, we testify, we refuse to let the truth be buried." May 8, 1945. The announcement came over loudspeakers at 14 hours. "All personnel and prisoners assemble in the main yard immediately." Hartman was in the re-education room. He'd been following the war's end carefully, the failure of the Ardennes offensive, the crossing of the Rhine, the Soviet advance into Berlin. He walked to the yard where 2,000 prisoners assembled. Colonel Williams stood on a platform. "Gentlemen, German forces have surrendered unconditionally to the Allied powers. The war in Europe is over." The war is over. For a moment, no one reacted. Then the responses began, varied, contradictory, human. Some collapsed to their knees. Others turned away, shoulders shaking. A few stood stoic, refusing to acknowledge defeat. Others looked relieved. Hartman stood still, feeling the weight. 5 years of war ended with one announcement. Millions dead, cities destroyed, and for what? For lies. Fisher stood beside him, tears streaming. "It's over. Everything we fought for, everything we believed, over." Throughout the afternoon, news came in fragments. Hitler dead by suicide, Berlin in ruins, German armies surrendering everywhere. The Third Reich, promised to last 1,000 years, had lasted 12. That evening, the mess hall was quiet. Men ate mechanically, absorbed in thought. "I keep thinking about my brother," Fischer said. "Dead at Stalingrad. He died believing we would win. Now what did his sacrifice mean?" "Maybe the question isn't what it meant," Hartman said, "but what we do with it. How we honor them not by pretending they died for something noble, but by learning why they died, by making sure it never happens again." An older sergeant named Ernst leaned forward. "I fought in the First War. When it ended, I swore never again. But then they promised to restore Germany's honor. I believed them. I let my son believe them. He died at Kursk. 2 wars in my lifetime. When does it end?" "Now," Hartman said. "It ends now. We learn now. Because if we don't, all this suffering truly will have been meaningless." After dinner, Hartman walked the perimeter. The fence was still there, still simple, still a symbol of the truth he'd learned here. Weber joined him. "Strange, isn't it? The war ending here, in this place?" "Not on a battlefield, just an announcement." "Perhaps that's fitting," Hartman said. "The war didn't end because we fought to the last man. It ended because we couldn't fight anymore, because the lies couldn't sustain the machine." "What will you do when we go home?" "I'll tell the truth. About what happened here, about what I learned, about the lies and their cost. People won't want to hear it, but I'll tell them anyway. They'll call you a traitor." "Perhaps. But the nation was already betrayed by leaders who lied, by ideology built on falsehood, by all of us who chose to believe what we wanted. Speaking truth now can't betray what's already destroyed." They gathered in the chapel that evening. Father O'Brien spoke. "Today, a war ended. Now you face a choice. You can return to Germany and help build something new, something better, something based on truth. Or you can retreat into comfortable lies and ensure another generation learns the same painful lessons. The first path is harder. It requires admitting you were wrong, facing consequences, accepting responsibility. It requires humility and courage. But it's the only path forward, because the alternative, the lies, the myths, the refusal to face truth, that's what brought you here in the first place." Hartman felt the truth of these words. This was his burden now, not defeat, but knowledge. Having seen beyond the lies while others still believed them, he would carry that burden home, would speak truth even when unwelcome, would help rebuild not just buildings but moral foundations. The war was over. The real work was beginning. October 1945. The train pulled into Hamburg at dawn. Hartman barely recognized the station, its glass roof shattered, walls pockmarked with holes. Hamburg was gone. He walked through streets that were paths through debris. Buildings stood like broken teeth. Some had collapsed entirely. Others leaned dangerously. People lived in the ruins, families in basements, children playing in rubble. This was the Reich that would last 1,000 years. He found his family's neighborhood by memory. The apartment building was a pile of broken concrete. The building next door was missing its entire front wall, rooms exposed to the sky. A woman sat on rubble nearby, sorting bricks. She looked up. His sister, Elsa, had aged 20 years. Thin to emaciation, her face worn and hard. She was 31 but looked 50. "Klaus," she said simply. "Elsa." They embraced. He felt how thin she was, her bones pressing through the dress. "Mother?" he asked. "January. Pneumonia. No medicine, no fuel, no food. She just stopped." Elsa's voice was flat. "We buried her in the cemetery." Hartman closed his eyes. He'd prepared himself, but preparation didn't help. "I'm sorry I wasn't here. You were captured. There was nothing you could have done." She gave up, I think. Gave up believing things would get better. Elsa led him to her home now, a basement room shared by 20 people. Her room was a corner with hanging blankets, barely space for a straw mattress. They sat, and Elsa told him everything. The firestorm. The weeks after, living in ruins, searching for food. The final months when even propaganda stopped promising victory. The British occupation now. "We were lied to, Klaus," she said finally. "All of it was lies, and we believed them because we wanted to believe." "I know," Hartman said. "I learned that too." "You were lucky. Captured, taken to America, fed and sheltered while we starved. You learned it in comfort. We learned it trying not to die." She was right. He'd had the luxury of learning truth while well-fed. His family had learned it while starving in basements. "What will you do now?" Elsa asked. "I'll tell the truth about what happened, why it happened, the lies we believed, and their cost." Elsa laughed without humor. "No one wants to hear the truth. They want to hear we were betrayed, that we didn't really lose, that their sacrifices meant something." "I know, but I have to try. Because if we don't face truth now, we'll end up right back where we started. Maybe people need lies, need to believe their suffering had meaning." "Perhaps, but that doesn't mean we stop telling the truth. We tell it anyway and hope some people listen." Elsa reached under the mattress, pulled out a wrapped bundle. "Mother wanted you to have this." Inside was a photograph their family before the war. Mother, father, Elsa, Klaus. All smiling, all together, all unaware. She carried this everywhere, even in the basement during raids. She wanted you to remember what was lost. Hartman held the photograph, feeling its weight. "I'll remember," he said. "All of it." March 1962. 20 years had passed. Hartman stood at the cemetery where his mother was buried. The city had been rebuilt, not the Hamburg of his childhood, but something new, modern buildings, paved streets. Life continued, but scars remained. In spaces where nothing would grow, in memorial plaques marking mass death, in the eyes of those who'd lived through it. Hartman was 52 now, gray at the temples, worn by years of truth-telling. The work had taken its toll but given his life meaning, not false meaning of ideology, but genuine meaning from living honestly. Fisher visited often, now with grandchildren who'd never known war. Weber had died 3 years ago, his heart giving out too young. But their work continued through others, through young people who'd listened and learned. The Federal Republic had grappled with its past. War crimes, trials, education programs, museums of remembrance. Not perfect, too many Nazis escaped justice, too many crimes unacknowledged, but it was something, and Hartman had played his part. Through testimony, writing, speaking, he'd helped ensure truth survived. Not just facts of what happened, but deeper truth of why, how ordinary men participated in extraordinary evil, how an entire nation believed lies. A young man approached carrying flowers. "Herr Hartman? I'm Daniel. I heard you speak at my school last year." Hartman nodded. "I remember. You asked about responsibility." "Yes. I've been thinking about it since. My grandfather won't talk about the war, just says he did his duty, had no choice. But you said we always have a choice." "That's right. The choice may be terrible, the cost unbearable, but the choice exists, and we're responsible for it." "Do you regret it? The war? All of it?" "Every day," Hartman said simply. "But regret isn't enough. What matters is what you do with it, whether you transform it into witness, testimony, warning. Is that why you keep speaking? Yes, because someone has to remember, someone has to carry truth forward, especially when unwelcome, because the alternative is to let lies replace truth, and that's how it happens again. I want to be a teacher, help young people understand what happened and why. Is that enough? Hartman smiled. It's everything. Because education, real education that questions and challenges, is the only defense against catastrophe. If you can teach one generation to value truth over ideology, doubt over certainty, evidence over propaganda, you've done something profound. Will you help me? Talk to my students? For as long as I'm able, this is my responsibility now. Not the responsibility of having fought, but of having learned, of carrying knowledge forward so others don't have to learn it the same way. As Daniel left, Hartman remained at his mother's grave. He thought about her death in the basement, about his sister's survival, about all the suffering based on lies. He thought about the sandwich in Kansas revealing impossible truth, about the fence that wasn't electric, about Earl Thompson's forgiveness, about accumulated evidence of truth. He understood his role now. Not soldier, not officer, not believer, but witness, carrier of truth. Reminder of what happens when lies replace reality, when ideology trumps evidence. It wasn't glorious work. Most people wished he'd stay quiet, stop reminding them. But it was necessary work ensuring memory survived and truth persisted. So Hartman would continue, would speak, write, testify, would carry the burden until his last breath, hoping others would carry it after, because truth mattered, not for its own sake, but for what it could prevent. For wars it might stop, suffering it might avert, lives it might save. The witness would remain, the truth would persist, the lessons would pass forward to those willing to learn. And perhaps they would make a difference. Perhaps. They came as conquerors. They left as witnesses. Some truths aren't taught. They're lived and remembered. And in the remembering, in the telling, in the refusal to let comfortable lies replace uncomfortable truths, there lies hope. Not hope of redemption that was lost with the first lie, the first crime, the first choice to value ideology over humanity, but hope of prevention, hope that bearing witness might stop it from happening again, hope that truth, no matter how painful, might prove stronger than lies that destroyed a nation. Hartman carried that hope to the end of his days, a small flame against vast darkness. Not enough to illuminate everything, not enough to erase the past, but enough to light the way forward. Enough to show that truth survives, even when everything else is destroyed. The witness remains, the truth persists, the lesson endures. May we have the wisdom to learn it before paying the same terrible price.